Good evening, Anku. Good evening, Rahul. It is really a pleasure to have this discussion. So, ESG goals have been much in the news, and everybody has been concerned about that. Let's just concentrate on the E part of it, which is the environment part of it. Now, it's a fact that as far as the telecom industry is concerned, almost 3 to 4% of the world's energy is taken by the telecom sector. And therefore, it becomes very, very important for us to address this issue. India needs to reduce its carbon footprint. And therefore, this issue is something which is of paramount importance right now. So let me start with you, Rahul. One of the big areas where energy is used is, of course, in the tower infrastructure and so on. So let's start first talking about that and your views on that.
Thank you, Pradeep ji. So I think it's a very relevant question you have asked for a telco perspective. For example, in this country, the largest consumption of electricity is by railways, we all are aware. But the second largest consumption is by the telcos. If I look at it on a global scale, I think today 58% of world population, which is around 4.7 billion, if you convert, has access to mobile internet. With that, and if I look in terms of the GDP, nearly 5.5% of the world GDP is mobile or mobile applications. So this amount of GDP, this amount of usage, and to do that, if I take just my country, we just rolled out 5G amongst two operators. We were able to roll out, more than 2.5 lakh towers. So to spread up this infrastructure to reach to the places where you are going, you require to set up networks. When you require to set up networks, you also consume power. Typically, we are talking about 5 to 10 kilowatt, per site. And so the amount of energy consumption you are doing is really very, very high. The fact is that the country has got its own goals on environment. As telcos, we have made some, targets for ourselves, getting in line with the GSMA norms, for example. And so it's very important that we try and frame, the policies and our practices as telcos to be able to contain
So
this.
what are some of these norms that have been set up?
So basically, it's, for example, what is the amount of carbon footprint reduction you can look at, right? So that is one of the things. There are norms set up by the government today on mandate on how do you, for example, manage e-waste, right? We are a large, consumption of electronics happening. Mobile handsets, for example, are also covered under a mandate, and so are so many other electronic goods. In fact, the industry has been in discussion with Ministry of Environment to see how we can manage and navigate the rules better so that we are able to roll out, without any pain. So there are these norms which are existing, and the government has been very proactive in actually looking at some of the various things which are happening in this sector, particularly how do we access green energy.
Okay. So, Anku, as was just now said by Rahul, that, there are going to be these data centers and there are going to be these networks which are going to be guzzling a lot of energy. You come from a chip background, right? So you are powering the entire telecom industry. So what do you think is being done on that side of the entire business to ensure that, the power consumption of networks goes down, of data centers goes down, and so on?
Okay, yeah, that's I think a relevant question. But definitely this environment is and energy, etc., is a big issue, right? So if we see, if you go back a bit, if you see from 1850 onwards, the climate, I think the temperature has increased by 1.3 degrees, which is a big change, and I think we are going towards 1.5.
And that is the danger point. So just point to left.
That's an inflection point. So
Yep.
certainly this is a very important topic, and I think all of us need to pay attention to it. So now talking about chip, or let's say a smartphone. So maybe I would talk a bit about the smartphone value chain, right? Now, whenever we use a smartphone, let's say to use AI or even to do a streaming, it needs a lot of energy, not only on the device but also on the data centers, as you mentioned, right? So we have to see the improvement in energy aspects of the device, of the data centers, and also the manufacturing aspect of it. So if we see the entire value chain, and maybe starting with data centers, we have the cloud, AWS, Google, etc. Now, what are they doing to improve the, to make it more green, right? And I know that, many of these data centers are using green energy in terms of, wind or solar. I think that is the kind of aspect which everyone is working on, and they have to need to do more and more of that. So we don't realize, but whenever we do just a simple, let's say Google Map search or a simple AI inference, it actually needs a lot of energy, and we don't realize, right? So this data center aspect is one big puzzle which is being solved, and that is as we go along, that really needs to work out. Second is about the device, and I think device, as you mentioned, we have the chip powering the device. So from MediaTek point of view, the chip is also energy guzzler. But what we have done is that we are using the more advanced nodes, for example, 4 nanometers, and later this year we have announced 3 nanometers. So that itself has a lot of inherent energy efficiency. So that on the device, it helps to conserve the battery, and in a sense that it helps to conserve energy. So energy conservation is very important.
What percentage energy improvement can come because of what technologies are being developed in that area?
It can improve by 40%, 50%. So
Okay.
much. So just by improving the technology being used to manufacture the chip, and not on the device, on the server, on the cloud, GPUs, etc. I think all these devices, everyone was working very, very hard to make these chips efficient. Because if you see any data center, it has thousands of GPUs, right? Now, if each chip is able to save 30%, 40%, over a multiplier effect is amazing, right? So that is also happening as we speak. And on the manufacturing side from the India, and if you see the news recently, we saw that more and more fabs are being started now, which is great news, right? That is the last frontier which was missing in the India value chain. So the fabs are coming up in India. So I think this is the right time for the regulators to see how can fabs be more energy efficient, because it's really fabs manufacturing is it is a big energy guzzler in terms of water, in terms of energy. So if we at this point itself, if we're able to improve the way those are coming up, I think that will really help us in the long run.
Okay. Rahul, Anku talked about mobile phones and so on. So let me shift gear and, from energy, let me also move to another part of environment, which is about waste. Okay. Because obviously, if we are talking about that every year, now what is the number of cell phones that we sell every year? Maybe around 20 crores? No, 30 crores.
So it's like 133 billion smartphones were sold recently. So,
right.
Yeah.
So that many number will be wasted or will be going into dumps as well.
Correct.
Right? So Rahul, in terms of this entire waste that is going to come up, I know you are not a mobile manufacturer, but as part of the industry, what should be done in terms of ensuring that there is proper waste cycles that are created?
Yeah, I think e-waste, as I told you, is a mandate which is already there from the Ministry of Environment. There is a full charter which has been given by the ministry on how are you going to process e-waste, who is responsible, and if you are not doing it, then you are supposed to be actually buying something called a green certificate sort of a thing, right? It's like you do in green energy. So I think that's the sort of a charter which is there. But I think on e-waste, the philosophy has to be very simple. It's can we reduce, can we reuse, and can we recycle? So if you follow those 3 R's, I think that's where is the starting point of this entire discussion. But let me dwell deeper into green energy and say that as telcos, we are very conscious of how fast are we able to make our network green. For example, as Airtel, we already have 7 large data center facilities, more than 120 edge data centers, and we are trying to see that at least 1/4 of them already should be solarized. Right? There are opportunities which are available even on towers, and we, with our partners, have been working out to see how fast we can use the potential of the energy to manage it. In terms of e-waste, in terms of
but just hold on there. This green towers has been there now, for at least 1.5 decades. But even then, the percentage of green towers is probably 20% even today.
I think that's not the way to look at it. Let me say like this. In 1.5 decades before, did you had as many number of towers? The answer is no. Right?
But every new one that was coming up could have been green, right?
No, that's not so easy to do. There are, first of all, challenges in even solarizing your sites. The solar, energy is not consistently available across geographies. The equipment cost has been one of the factors in the past. Maintaining these solarized sites is also a challenge, particularly in rural areas. You actually have to deploy sometimes people to clean up the solar cells, because otherwise the efficiency of the site itself is not.
Disposal of solar waste is another issue.
Yeah.
In fact, in today's papers, there was this thing about the number of kilotons of solar waste that will get generated, So we'll keep that for another day. But Anku, yeah.
I'd like to add something on the e-waste. I think from the enterprise side, I think a lot of rules have come up, and corporates really have to do their bit to make sure the e-waste, let's say the desktops, laptops, etc., instead of being disposed, they need to follow some rules. But I think from the end user side, that is still something which is missing. As I think we were discussing earlier, that can we, the self-discipline will not really work. And we have to see that if I have to dispose my cell phone, how do I do it so that there is no, harm to the environment? I think that's a place where we have to still see, what can work. But from enterprise side, I think totally agree that, it has worked pretty well. I think most organizations are mandated to follow e-waste policies and make sure that it doesn't really harm the environment. But yeah, for the end user side, I'm not sure how is it working.
Yeah, but even from the industry side, and by the way, this is not just true about mobile phones and so on. As I was giving you an example, that if I'm throwing a blade, all right, I just take it and dump it. I take batteries and I just dump it into the thing. Medicines expire, and you just take the expired medicines and just throw it in the dustbin. So perhaps with each and every item, there should be a disposal policy that should be written down on the packaging, that this is how you should be disposing that off. So is it self-regulation that will work, or is it necessary for us to mandate certain things? Your views on this?
I
Rahul?
think the mandate is already there, as I shared with you. There is a mandate from Ministry of Environment. A lot of FMCG white good companies are already covered under that. As telcos, we are also covered on certain aspects. In fact, whenever we are giving out our routers...
Mandatory in what way? On the packaging, there is no disposal instruction for any item.
No, there are, if you look at the equipment, actually there are, instructions which are there to be done. And irrespective, there is a law to be followed, right? So whether you are educated about it or not, or ignorance of law cannot be a way to say that.
I understand ignorance of law, but
I think what is more important is that how far are we able to align and educate our stakeholders as to what is really happening. I think that is a larger piece of part. For example, are customers aware of what is their responsibility on mobiles? Are they aware, or are they aware of the router which is sitting at their home? How is that got to be taken care of? So these are the challenges which are there. I think there are two road journeys out here. One is, if we take this charter of saying that we have to manage this better, and there is a framework and guidelines which have been created by the ministry, which have been done very collaboratively, let me say, with the industry. So there is a road ahead to be done. The Environment Ministry also recognized that it's easier said than done to be able to implement this. And that's why they created this concept of actually buying out green credit points, if you are not able to do it. So green credit points actually gives you assurance that you are doing something green, if not this particular part. So I think those are the roads which have been created. I was talking to few people. You'll be surprised today. It's less about green sometimes. It's actually about theft. Recently, we have seen large amount of telecom equipment actually being stolen, right, across the sites. And where is it going?
Oh.
It's landing up in parts of the world where there are restrictions of trade right now, right? So that's a different part of a challenge. It's a huge challenge for us. So at one end, we are trying to stop the leak, and at the other end, the equipment is actually going out of our own hands. So there are different type of challenges in this scape. But I think
that is a strange thing, right? Equipment getting stolen. That is
and goes into areas.
There are trade barriers today in
this.
the world which have been applied, and because of that, there is a shortage of equipment in certain parts of the world. And what better way to get it? And it's not only happening in India, it's happening in large parts of Southeast Asia, for example.
That is very interesting. Yeah. So just continuing the same regulation or self-governance. What are your views on that?
So I think on the enterprise, definitely regulation would work, and it is working, as Rahul also mentioned. On the self-governance side, I think that's where the challenge lies, and that's where probably if you say we talked about Raddiwala, right? So the in India we have Raddiwalas which are able to recycle the newspapers and so on, because the end user is able to monetize to some extent, even though very small extent. So if we can actually encourage people by somehow monetizing the waste, right? That would probably work. Maybe it's a small thing, but it does work in the Raddiwala case, right? So that
but
would be
even
one,
probably the Raddiwalas need training
Yeah,
as
yeah,
to
even they
how
need training.
to dispose of different kind
Yeah,
of things.
actually, yeah, they also need
Are they
training.
equipped to be able to dispose of
Everything.
all the
They don't,
electronic
because-
stuff that
because
comes
you
in
know
there?
many things, for example, what is can be monetized, they do well with that, but something like a thermocol, they would just put in the landfill. So absolutely, even they need to be trained to do
Okay.
that. Yeah. Right.
And let me tell you, the consciousness of the industry to do it is really very high.
Yeah.
For example, recently we collaborated to change the plastic SIM card into a PVC, SIM card. So consciously, whatever you can do to go to recyclable, stuff, you really try to do that already. So it's a continuous journey. You cannot have a change like happening today or tomorrow or even like 3 years down the line. But if you set up really big goals for yourself and say, okay, this is what I really want to achieve, I'm sure you can reach there. Yes.
Yeah, but so far it's not really in the KPIs of organizations of telco
I disagree with you,
companies and
Pradeep.
so on. No.
No, I
Actually,
disagree
yeah,
with you,
yeah.
because if you go to today, we are a listed entity. SEBI has got a mandate on ESG. SEBI actually monitors your progress on the commitments you are making and what you are doing on these issues, right? So, and there are annual reports available which clearly have sections covering environment, in particular. Our own company does it. I'm aware, and SEBI already very frequently monitors it as to what we are doing. So I think in terms of framework, we are there. In terms of self-regulation, which is always, by the way, the best model to govern yourself, I think there also I see a lot of serious responsibility happening. A lot of players, like my friend out here also, these are big companies now. These are not companies who are going to take environment as a light topic. A lot of investors, when they look towards you, actually look at your initiatives and your commitments towards the ESG goals. So I think it's inherent virtuous cycle which has been created now to be very conscious about being green, about being friendly towards environment.
Absolutely. I think MediaTek also has zero emissions goal by 2050.
Right.
So that is being followed very religiously by the executive office. How do we achieve that in terms of looking at the value chain and what can be done to improve the ESG component of that. So we do have that kind of goal for us.
Okay, so now it is getting into the KPIs. It is already there in the KPIs
So I
of
think
organizations.
corporates and enterprises are very serious about this.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I think that is indeed a good thing
Right.
to do. What about? I'm sure people don't talk about it, but immense amount of energy also goes into, let's say, the fiber optics cables and stuff like that. And perhaps, again, not specifically your area, but as industry experts, any comments on, the fiber optics and so on, and the amount of energy that goes in there?
I think we are being a bit too critical. If you can also see at the good sides of technology, right?
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So using Zoom calls and avoiding the travel and using such paperless.
Yeah, but we are
documents.
going back now
Yeah.
to physical stuff. But anyway,
Yeah, right.
yeah. But you are right.
Yeah.
There is a
Lot of advantage.
shift that has taken place over the
But we
last
need to still improve. Yeah.
3-4 years, and perhaps that needs to be accelerated so that we don't guzzle as much
Yeah, absolutely,
energy.
I think the shift is quite imminent, even in the technologies you're using. For example, 5G is more energy efficient than earlier technologies. The new handsets you are getting are more energy efficient compared to what you used to have earlier. Even the battery sizes, the battery life is much bigger and higher than what they really used to be. The example of Zoom is a very relevant example. And what has happened during pandemic, I was listening to the earlier speaker talking about the increasing incidence of spam because of the pandemic. But on the other side, see the flip side, for a country which was not so digitized, is now actually very much digitized, right? Let me take an example. Nearly as an industry, I think only less than 35 to 40% recharges used to be happening through a virtual or digital mode. After the pandemic, during the pandemic, it really shot up to around 75%. And by the way, it has not gone down. We are still at around 65, 66%. So I think there's a permanent shift in behavior which has happened, towards digitization, which is a very big thing. For a country which, literacy is not fully spread out, the amount of awareness of people have, the billions of transactions happening on the financial side, on the UPI side, goes a long way to show that how people really take up to these things. And I'm sure on green also, a consciousness will start happening very soon.
Yeah, so essentially what you're saying is that the telecom industry has contributed in several ways in different kind of processes that have actually reduced the energy footprint. Actually, that was my purpose of trying to provoke both of you so that
did a good job at that then. Yes.
So it was deliberate act of trying to provoke you so that we could actually come out with what really is happening in these areas. But you are absolutely right. The telecom industry for at least the last 2 decades has been conscious of the fact that it has to move towards zero footprint, and it has been heading in that direction. There is work which has been going on in terms of ensuring that whether it is a tower network, whether it is the other the soft network which is there, or in terms of in each and every area there should be energy efficiency in terms of mobile handsets and so on. But I think we still have many miles to go, many things to be done with that. So with that, thank you very much, gentlemen, for a very rich discussion on a topic which is of prime importance to each and every person sitting in this room. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.